When you hear managing up for decades, it's been equated with being a suck up, ingratiating yourself, knowing your boss's coffee order, laughing at their bad jokes, right? When they ask you to do something, they say jump, you ask how high, that sort of mentality. And that is a old school way of looking at managing up that may have worked 20 or 30 years ago, but it's obviously sort of out of pace with our culture now, and it's not going to get you what you need now. And so the managing up, as I define it, really when it comes down to it, is how do you navigate and build relationships with the people that have more positional authority than you, namely your boss, but not just your boss, because now your direct manager may be one of many people that have influence over your projects, your career trajectory, your bonus, your salary. And so if you're thinking about managing up as just, my boss is my number one customer, you're going to put yourself in a risky position.
Welcome to Behavioral Grooves. I'm Kurt Nelson.
And I'm Tim Houlihan. You just heard from today's guest, Melody Wilding, the author of the new book, Managing Up, Navigating Complex Workplace Relationships to Get Things Done.
And in her book, Melody completely redefines what it means to manage up. It's not about manipulation or simply pleasing your boss or being a brown noser. No, it's about creating the conditions for your own success while at the same time building authentic relationships with those who have positional authority.
Yeah, what we found fascinating about this perspective is how Melody breaks down managing up. See what I did there? Did you like that? That breaking down managing up? Like that? Okay. So, but she breaks it down, managing up, into 10 essential conversations that we all need to master, from understanding communication styles to having those very difficult discussions about money and advancement.
Breaking down, managing up, man. Okay, here we go. And each of these 10 conversations that Melody writes about comes with practical scripts and strategies that you can implement immediately. That was one of the things that we really liked, and how Melody makes it all very real and very accessible in the way that she wrote the book. And as she says in the book, you can literally steal the script, quote unquote, for these challenging interactions. And it's a real easy way for you to just take it and be able to run with it.
She brings a unique blend of expertise to our conversation as well. She has an interesting background in psychology. She ran a research lab at Rutgers University. She studied how emotions affect memory. And then after that, she went on to become a licensed therapist before transitioning to a coach of professionals in workplace dynamics. Classic underachiever.
Tim, you and I we're lazy asses. We sit on our ass. I know. That's crazy. Okay. I really liked how the psychological lens that she brings gives her work depth that goes beyond typical career advice. She helps us understand not just what to say, but why certain approaches work better with different personality types. You get that personality types and all this. It's cool stuff. It's bringing all the psychology stuff back in. I love it.
It is good. And in today's workplace, your direct manager is just one of the many people who might have influence over your projects or your career trajectory, and of course, compensation. Melody's framework helps people in all these different situations. All of you listeners are going to be in some situation that you can benefit from navigating these very complex ecosystems.
Right. One of the other things that I really liked about this conversation, Tim, is we talked with her about her perspective on the importance of agency. And now agency is where you're making up your own mind, making your own decisions, and doing what you want to do. And as she tells us in this conversation, you teach people how to treat you, quote unquote. You teach people how to treat you. So if you're always responding to messages within minutes or volunteering for every single task, what do you do? What are you doing? You're signaling that your time isn't valuable. And in some way, you're giving up your agency.
Absolutely. We also tackled some topics that many of us struggle with, like how to push back diplomatically when your boss assigned you low-valued work, or how you're going to have that awkward conversation about compensation.
Oh, that awkward conversation about compensation. I have to have that with myself, and it's really hard even. There we go, man. All right. Before we dive in, if you enjoy today's conversation and find any value in it, please consider subscribing to Behavior Grooves on our YouTube channel or joining our Facebook group, the Grooves community out there.
Yeah.
Every week, we bring you conversations with fascinating guests at the intersection of behavioral science, psychology, and real-world applications. And guess what, Tim?
What?
Guess what?
What?
Drum roll, please. Do a drum roll. Can we get a drum?
I'm rolling.
Right? We just hit 1 million downloads.
That's fantastic.
Crazy, isn't it?
I gotta ask, like, what took so long?
It's not, 7.5 years, I guess. I don't know. It's not like we have a huge team providing us with marketing geniuses and tons of money to go out and kind of promote this. We're dependent upon
you, me, and Caroline.
Mouth. Yeah, you, me, Caroline, and and we already have full-time jobs, so we're doing this as a side hustle, as we've talked about in one of our other things, right?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I do want to just reiterate our gratitude to all the listeners who have supported Behavioral Grooves over the last 7.5 years.
Oh, yes. Thank you. The gratitude is deeply felt. Thank you.
Truly. And if this episode specifically helps you with workplace dynamics or the conversations you're going to have about compensation, we'd love to hear about it. Drop us a note, drop us a line on social media, go out to our Facebook page, the community, Behavioral Grooves community page, leave us a note. We will get back to you. And by the way, a lot of people have referred Behavioral Grooves podcast to their friends and colleagues, and we hope that you'll do the same. We hope that you just jump on board the Behavioral Grooves love train.
The love train?
Well, I'm kind of riffing there. Maybe it's not a love train.
Oh, I mean, I think the only thing worse would be Love Wagon. You would have said that. There you go. So.
Wagon of love.
Oh, God. All right. No, well, just jump on board the Behavioral Grooves train. How about that?
Okay.
There we go. As we're moving to better understanding of human dynamics and doing that. And again, like lots of people have done, please just share this with your friends, your coworkers, whoever it is. It's real simple to do, and join the movement. And with that, listeners, please sit back with a generous pour of the psychology of workplace relationship building and enjoy our conversation with Melody Wilding.
Melody Wilding, welcome to Behavioral Grooves.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Well, we're thrilled to have you. And can I just first ask, would you prefer to have dinner with your favorite athlete or favorite musician?
Oh, musician, hands down.
That's the best answer ever. That's just,
these are not, there's no right answer on this except for this question with Tim. This is the only question that Tim asks, and he has a definite right or wrong answer on that. I, on the other hand, am completely open. So if you had to choose what musician, is there one that comes to mind, or a few, or?
A few. And I think I have what I hope are eclectic music tastes, but I am a Swiftie. So I will just put that out there. I am a Swiftie. And so I would die to have dinner with Taylor Swift.
Yeah, wouldn't that be fascinating?
Mostly to pick her. She is a brilliant businesswoman.
Oh,
and that I think would interest me the most, just to talk to her about how she captures attention and yeah, I could go on, but that would be
Yeah, no,
fascinating.
I fully agree with you. I think she is brilliant, not just from her music, but from, as you said, the business side of it. I mean, the Eras Tour was the most successful musical tour in history by
far,
by like 3x and various different pieces. So, all right. This is a speed round. We'll get there. All right.
Yeah.
So, all right, Melody, second speed round question. Are you a coffee drinker or a tea drinker?
I am a decaf coffee drinker, and I quit. Yeah, I quit caffeine maybe 8 years ago. Now, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. Do not recommend doing it cold turkey, but yes, decaf.
All right.
Not fun.
Okay.
But decaf's my go-to.
Decaf go-to. All right, fantastic.
Third speed round question. Which is better when it comes to getting respect from your manager? To A, quickly getting to the point in every conversation, or B, just being relaxed, swapping stories, building rapport, taking it easy?
I'm going to go with option A, getting to the point quickly. Because even if you get to the point quickly, you can always invite deeper conversation from there.
Excellent. Fantastic. We're going to talk more about that. We're definitely going to talk more about that.
Okay. Last speed round question, and again, we'll probably end up talking about this more as we go on. Is it possible to advocate for yourself with your boss without being seen as a show-off?
I am of the belief that yes, it is entirely possible.
Excellent.
It all depends on the approach, and I think that's what I'm hoping to break down is in this book is how do you manage up actually in a way that serves you first and foremost, and is actually not at the end of the day just about pleasing your boss.
Yes. Oh, that's great.
Well, tell us about managing up, your new book. This term has been around for a while. What is so important for you about the term, and what does it mean to you, managing up?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure both of you, coming up in your career, when you hear managing up for decades, it's been equated with being a suck up, ingratiating yourself, knowing your boss's coffee order, laughing at their bad jokes, right? When they ask you to do something, they say jump, you ask how high, that sort of mentality. And that is a old school way of looking at managing up that may have worked 20 or 30 years ago, but it's obviously sort of out of pace with our culture now, and it's not going to get you what you need now. And so the managing up, as I define it, really when it comes down to it, is how do you navigate and build relationships with the people that have more positional authority than you, namely your boss, but not just your boss, because now your direct manager may be one of many people that have influence over your projects, your career trajectory, your bonus, your salary. And so if you're thinking about managing up as just, my boss is my number one customer, you're going to put yourself in a risky position. And it's no longer about just doing what your boss says. It's about being more of a trusted advisor, a partner to them, speaking truth to situations, pushing back when necessary, surfacing trade-offs or risks when you need to. And so that's why at the end of the day, managing up is about you getting what you need, creating the conditions for your success, and to feel more in control of your experience at work, to shape people's perception of you, not just, saying yes to whatever your boss says.
Yeah. You wrote early on in the book, and I thought this was a great question, is you said, why is it my responsibility to manage up? And I think for many of us, right, we think, why do I need to do this? Shouldn't my boss just be paying attention to me and understanding, so why do I need to do that? And so help us understand, why is it our responsibility to manage up with our, as you said, not just that one person, but that kind of, ecosystem of people that are above us.
Yeah. And I get it. It can feel like extra emotional labor. Why shouldn't my leader just be better? No. And I really think it's a both and. That yes, leaders, they do need to be held to a higher standard. They do need better training. They need to have better self-awareness. Very true. At the same time, you personally can change yourself. That's the only thing at the end of the day you can impact is yourself. Your boss may still be someone who is scattered, may still have a million different priorities, may not be a clear communicator, may be too direct, whatever it is. But how do you get what you need to thrive? How do you learn how to deal with that situation besides just leaving your job when it's not a good fit? Since for most people, that's not reasonable or possible. And so it really comes back to, how do you reclaim a sense of agency? And so much about managing up is actually saving your leader cognitive energy. And that may be, giving them FAQs that they can present to stakeholders if you can't be in a certain meeting. So you're saving them energy, you're doing them a solid, but at the same time, that benefits you, because at the end of the day, you're driving the narrative that you want that group of people to hear. And so, yes, it may be a little bit of extra effort, but at the end of the day, it's going to save you a lot of stress, heartache. It's going to change how people see you at the end of the day.
It's great that the book very clearly shouts your experience and expertise as a business consultant and all that comes through. But you have so many great sources, and you just spouted out like agency and cognitive burden and this whole idea. There's a very psychological EQ, persuasion, negotiation. You talk about a lot of things that are very psychological in the book. How'd you come to so many sources?
Yes, well, my background is in psychology, and so I used to run a research lab at Rutgers University that looked at how do our emotional experiences then affect our memory of certain situations. And I went on to become a therapist, get my master's in social work, and so from a very young age, I've been just captivated with how people tick, why do they do the way they do, really trying to deconstruct that for my own self. And, as I got into my career, I shifted from doing therapy in the traditional sense, like helping people unpack their childhood and gain insight and self-awareness. I transitioned much more into coaching, because what the people I was working with wanted was something that was more goal-driven, practical, tactical, aimed at their careers and performance. But what I realized there was that you could have the best technical skills in the world, but if you don't understand what motivates people, if you don't understand how to decode what their pressures, their priorities are, how to adjust your message on the fly and read the room, if you don't understand any of that, then you're not going to get through to anyone. You're not going to get ahead. You're going to feel frustrated. And, there really comes a point in your career, like I see this happen for so many people that are mid-career, mid-level, where your technical skills get you so far, and then things flip, where now all of a sudden it's about managing the power dynamics, the human element, motivating your team, but also persuading up and across. And most people are totally unequipped for that because they don't have this knowledge of psychology and human behavior.
Well, who gets taught that in school too?
No one. Yeah. No one.
Unless you're going into psychology, if you're getting a business degree, you might have a course or two in that, but that is not what you study, or nor is it what your degree is in. And yet we expect that this is just, this is easy, right? This is, we all interact with people. We should all be able to do that. And that's not the case. And I really love that you pull that out in the book. And I think it's really important. I also really love the way, and I think Tim does too, is that you structure your book as each chapter looks at a different conversation. And you labeled them as, this is the alignment conversation, the styles conversation, the feedback, the money conversation, et cetera. So help our listeners understand because it was obviously very purposeful in how you did that. Help our listeners understand why you framed it that way, as opposed to just like simple positions that you need to take with your boss.
Yeah. And thank you for asking that too, because you're right. There's a method to my madness here.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah. And a lot of it came from the fact that when people are told you hear in your performance review, well, you need to get better at influencing without authority, or we need to see you manage up more effectively. And you think, all right, but what does that mean? How do I do that? I know I need to do that, but how?
Right.
And if you do get advice, it's usually some pithy one-liner like, well, be proactive, get in their head, take initiative, come with solutions, not problems. Wonderful, but it's a very piecemeal approach, and it tends to break down very quickly when the rubber meets the road or a situation gets more complex.
Yeah.
And honestly, I found myself falling into a bit of that trap when I was initially writing the book. I went through 4 entire versions of the manuscript.
Oh, man.
And yes, it was very painful.
I can't even imagine. I'm just having a little bit of mind-blowing moment right now. 4 complete rewrites?
Yeah. Hundreds of thousands of words are in a Google Doc somewhere.
Okay.
And it was because it wasn't clicking. It felt like, okay, I'm citing this tactic and this strategy and study, and it still felt scattered. And so what really clicked was recognizing this framework of the 10 conversations that you were mentioning and really putting it into more of a systematic methodology that someone could follow. So I really had to think about, where do you start when it comes to managing up? And how do you start? If I was literally coaching someone going through their day to day, what would I be telling them to do? How would I be guiding them in terms of their language and the techniques that they're using? And so that's where it came from, was giving people something they could grasp onto and follow, and also orient themselves to, what aspect of managing up do I need to work on right now? Is it giving feedback? Is it having the advancement conversation? It also allows you to kind of know where you are in the process.
Yeah, in the most literal sense, some of these, you lay them out in such a way that there's almost a script-like aspect to it. Like, I could adopt these words, but on a more
You talk about stealing the script that you put in there, which I love that. I mean, as you said, the practicality of what you're bringing to this, and the tips and the tactics are very actionable. Sorry, Tim, I talked over you there, like a boss would, just at this subordinate that you are to me.
Mansplaining here. And yeah, there's also, you cover the topics broadly enough to where someone can walk away and go, there's a big picture here. And there's a lot of nuance in what you're sharing. Now, Kurt and I had some favorite conversations as we went through. But before we get to ours, maybe we should just start with one of your favorite conversations. Was there one of the chapters that you felt was like, oh man, this is it. Like, this is the tasty bit right here?
There's a few, but I would say the one I keep coming back to again and again, maybe, I am a little biased towards it.
You might be.
Yeah. Is chapter 2, the styles conversation, because I think it provides the biggest unlock for people.
Great.
But I would love to hear. It seems like maybe
that was ours. That was our number one.
Actually, so because, and again, here I see it as one of the biggest challenges that people face when they're working, not just how to decode their boss's style, also their peers, like the other people that they're working with. And there's so much friction that can happen if you don't get that. But then it's not, that's the first part of it. But then the second part that I love is like, okay, so now having decoded that, what do I do? Right? It's like, okay, great. My boss is X, but okay, what do I do? And so help us understand where you were going with that and what you like.
Yeah. Well, the book starts with the alignment conversation, which is more focused on the what of the work. Okay, what are we focusing on? So I'm doing work that's meaningful, valuable. I'm not just wasting my time or spinning my wheels. But then we have to talk about how. How do we accomplish the work together? And the styles conversation is so critical, because the vast majority of the time when someone comes to me and says, my boss is difficult, my colleague is impossible to work with, I can't get through to this stakeholder, it's not because that person is difficult, it's because that person is different. And we're talking past each other. You may have a very people-oriented style, and the person you're communicating with has much more of a task-oriented style. And that's where we hit walls. And so, looking at, there's actually not a ton of great research on communication styles, but what most of the studies out there agree on is that, generally speaking, there's 2 dimensions that we can break someone's communication style down into. And the first of those is dominance. How much someone likes to control, assert themselves, how quickly they want to move in a conversation, and how task-oriented they are. That's dominance. And then you have sociability. So how much do they care about the people element? How much do they value context and, really relishing in the details? And if you take those 2 factors, you lay them into a matrix, you get 4 different styles. And so, all of us are humans. We're much more complex than that, but it's a helpful, you use the word decode. It's like a little bit of a decoder ring to help you realize, am I dealing with a commander boss who is very direct, tends to be more dominant, wants things straight to the point, does not really care about who's on board with an idea or if there's buy-in. They just want it done, and they wanted it done yesterday. Versus if you're dealing with someone who's more of a caretaker, those are people that are low on dominance, very high on sociability. They really care about stability, harmony, morale. If you're influencing that person, you're going to want to talk much more about how does this benefit the team and people's well-being and their investment in the project. And let's just slow down and unpack this, which is a totally different approach than you would take with someone who's more dominant. And so it really allows you to depersonalize someone's communication with you instead of saying, why is my boss so rigid about how they want ideas presented? They just have no creativity. They're not flexible. Well, they may be what I would call a controller type who's very process oriented. They place a high value on precision and efficiency. And you may not see that as someone who may be more like vision oriented and big picture. But when you see that, it allows you to say, okay, this isn't about me. This is about their style. How do I get through to that person? How do I flex, not just contort myself into something I'm not, but how do I flex and adapt my message so that they actually hear it?
Hey, this is Kurt, and we want to say thanks for listening to Behavioral Grooves. And we hope that you're enjoying this episode, but it feels a little bit one-sided. You're hearing from us, but we're not hearing from you.
This is Tim, and we have 2 suggestions to remedy that. The first is join our Facebook page and engage with us.
We want to talk with you. We want to hear your perspectives, and hopefully our Facebook page might be the place to have some of that interaction. So please come and join us.
The other recommendation we have for you is to leave us a quick rating. The little 5-star thing at the bottom of your app, or a short review. Just leave us a few words about what you like about Behavioral Grooves. We'd very much appreciate it.
Thanks, and we now return you to our regularly scheduled programming.
Okay, can we play this conversation roulette one more time? Because the money conversation really struck me also as one of the things I was thinking about is like when you pose the question, is there ever really a great time to ask for a raise, for instance? And in fact, there is. there can be. And so can you talk about the importance of the money conversation and sort of your mindset around how to help people deal with something that can be so difficult?
Yes. Yeah. There may never be a perfect time to have the conversation, but there's better times, right?
Yeah.
And that comes back to this idea of being able to read the room or read the environment. And I hope a meta skill people acquire through the book is that sort of organizational awareness and discernment of reading between the lines, having that perception of feeling situations out. Because, we're in a time where I work with a lot of people who are in the government right now, and some of them are losing funding. There's a lot of things are up in the air.
Yeah.
And now would not be a good time to talk about your advancement.
Reading the room.
Why not?
A raise, and you have to read what's going on. And so feeling it out in that way is important. You also need to seed your approach. And I actually talk about this in the advancement chapter. Advancement and money tend to go hand in hand. But the first moment your boss hears about the fact that you want a raise should not be in your performance review. And there's a big myth. I've had lots of clients who say, I fully expected to get a raise at my review and that didn't happen. And now I'm hurt by this and now I feel unvalued.
Right.
When in actuality, we need to back that up and be seeding that interest to say, in this next year, I want to position myself to go to this level, to go from a, L6 to an L7, or from a director to a VP, for example. What is it going to take to get there? And then also tracking throughout the year to say, okay, we're halfway through this year. How am I doing? Here is what I understood the expectations were. Am I still in a good place to be considered for that raise, for that next salary level? If not, what do we need to adjust? So that there are no surprises and you're getting objections along the way that you can understand, because there may be other people that factor into this process that need to get to know you, need to get to know your work, so you can get ahead of that. And then the last thing I'll mention with the money conversation is that when you do present it, when you do present your request, that you position it as coming from a place of fairness. And what I mean by that is, we're under the assumption that you're asking for more money because you've taken on more responsibility, you have been with the organization a long time, and you've acquired a lot of wins, or your team has grown, whatever it is. You're providing more value for the organization. And there should be a fair exchange of compensation for that additional value. But most people approach the money conversation like, I deserve this. I deserve this because I have been busting my butt and things have been really chaotic. That may be true, but that's not what's going.
Right.
That's not what's going to persuade your boss or help them make a case to their upper management. So the approach needs to be more like, over the last, year, I've been providing this value, and I'm hoping that we can revisit making my salary reflective of those accomplishments, or commensurate with, or matching, syncing up, using that sort of language that's kind of like righting the ship versus I deserve more. It adds a totally different feeling and tone to the conversation.
It's interesting that you talk about fairness. And again, from the psychology side of things, right? Fairness is a huge element, and it's wired into our DNA. If people haven't seen the Franz de Waal Capuchin monkey video, please go out and just Google that, because you can actually see the reaction of a monkey doing work, right? I'm doing the same work as this person over here, or this monkey over here, and you're feeding me cucumbers versus, feeding the other monkey grapes, and the reaction is visceral, right? And
unequal,
it's there. And tapping into that, which we all have as humans. We are all, have an underlying understanding that fairness is a key aspect of how we've evolved in various different pieces. So I love the idea of you bringing that perspective into this, because it truly is. And I deserve this conversation. Again, the frame is just one where that can probably drive a little bit more reactance. It's like, no, you deserve. What are you telling me what you deserve, as opposed to doing this? And I'm sorry, I'm getting on my soapbox here, but yeah. Go ahead, Tim. That was just me talking without Kurt. A question included in there, which is par for course for Kurt.
And here we are back to the conversation with Melody about her book, Managing Up. And it's, we're big fans of Linda Babcock's work at Carnegie Mellon, the non-promotable work.
Yes.
We're just huge fans of the stuff that she's done. And you spend a fair amount of time talking about workplace dynamics and navigating workplace dynamics. You have some really great tips. Can you share a couple with our listeners in that particular vein?
Yes. And you were talking about that concept of promotable work. And I mentioned that in the chapter on visibility, right? That you want to be working on promotable work that's connected to the company's higher level objectives, right? That it has some element that would warrant visibility to other people, and is connected to the bottom line. Frankly, you can show some sort of result from it. And even if your work is we can't all be doing just promotable work all the time, but what's important is that we do our part to make the connection between how does what we're doing actually matter in the bigger picture. So what does it facilitate, enable, create, for example? Like, let's say you do work on spreadsheets, for example, like data entry or something like that. What's the bigger picture, the higher order impact of that? Maybe it speeds up some other team's work because the data is very clean and it's organized and other people can move faster. That's very different than just saying, well, I enter things in a spreadsheet all day. It has a greater air to it, again, which is important for making the connection to other people. Well, why does this matter in the grand scheme of things? And very much connect. Go ahead.
Well, and how different is that from the boss saying, we need somebody to plan the annual holiday party. So, hey, Tim, can you take care of that this year? How does that fit into that conversation?
Yep, that's where we get into the boundaries conversation, right? And being able to push back diplomatically when you have, quote unquote, lower value work thrust on you. You need to be able to diplomatically say, no. Except you can't just say no. No is not a complete sentence in the workplace, unfortunately. Maybe in other aspects of life, but in the workplace, it's not going to go over well. You need to save face and preserve your reputation more than that. And so, let's say you are asked to plan the company party, which, as Linda Babcock's work shows, this happens to women much more often.
Yes.
Those administrative tasks do fall to us. And so there's a couple of approaches you could take there. If what I call your pushback power is on the lower side, and pushback power basically means what's the leverage you have to say no in terms of the strength you can do that with, how assertively you can say no, or directly rather, and how often you can say no. And so if that's on the lower side, you may use something like the conditional yes, where you say, I know this is urgent, or I know this is important. I'm happy to handle it this time. However, let's talk about how we hand this off to an admin in the future, or we get another team involved, or we create a process so someone else can take this over. So it's saying yes, but also you can also say something like, I hope we recognize this is an exception. I won't always be able to accommodate a timeline like this or a request like this, and I appreciate your understanding with that. So you can use the conditional yes. You can use the positive no, which is Roger Fisher and William Urey's concept. Positive no is all about, okay, I can't do this, but here's what I can do. I can't plan the entire party, but I can, coach the more junior employee and give her a checklist of what we've done in the past.
Or him.
That's correct. That's correct. Very true.
Probably not, but could.
Probably, you never know. Now it may be AI doing it.
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And so we have the conditional yes, the positive no. The last thing I'll mention is the trade-off. And let's just go with the party example again. All right. So I hear planning this party is important. Yeah. Maybe. Maybe important. I hear you would like me to plan this party. These are the other things I have on my plate. What would you like me to deprioritize in order to make space for planning this event? And that does a few things. Again, if your pushback power is on the lower side, it can be helpful because you're putting the decision-making power back in the leader's hand. You can make a recommendation to say, I would suggest we do X. However, at the end of the day, it's up to you. And so those are all ways to kind of get out of when you're just having more and more and more dumped on your plate, so that you can focus on the things that are higher value.
Yeah. As our listeners can probably tell already, the book and even what we've just been talking about are filled with really great examples and tips and even scripts, as we talked about before, that I love. You go steal this script and it's filled throughout the book. And we've talked about a number of those. Do you have, and this may be like, all right, there's so many of them, because you do it. It is literally packed with some really great actionable tips. For our listeners, though, is there one that you have as a favorite? I know for me, I love the Create a Me manual, which was actually, I'm like going back to that styles component, and like, okay, got the decoding. Now I need to understand me, right? So is there one that you kind of resonate with, or just pick one, right? It doesn't have to be your favorite. I don't want to have to put you on the spot to go through all of them and pick a favorite child.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we all have a favorite.
Yeah.
I'm an only child, so I escape.
So you are the favorite.
You're the favorite. Yeah.
That's right. Let's talk about the Me manual, because I think that is it's very tactical, right? It's very meaty, and like you were saying, it's goes hand in hand with the styles conversation. And we were talking about those 4 communication style types, but half of the equation is understanding how someone else ticks, their psychology, but we also don't want to lose you in that. And so that's part of this updated version around managing up is, yes, understand how the people around you work, but also assert your own style. And that doesn't mean a my way or the highway approach, but it means you understanding, okay, what are my preferences around receiving feedback, how I process information, the types of work I do and don't enjoy. Most of us never take the time to actually unpack that.
Yes.
We're just moving through the world. And so it can be really helpful when you gain insight about, actually, my favorite part of being involved in a project is in the startup phase. And then I like handing it over to someone else to follow through. And personally, I'm the opposite. I'm really bad at sort of ideation and getting something off the ground. I'm the person you want when you want like consistent follow through on something. But knowing that allows me to know where to insert myself, where I need to ask for help. And it also allows you, like, let's say you're having a conversation with your manager about, all right, how would we know we're going to face conflicts? Like, let's just face the elephant in the room. We're not always going to disagree. How do you want to handle that when that happens? You can hear them out, hear what they say, and then you can say, that's great. That's so useful to hear. Thank you for sharing that with me. From my end, what would be helpful is that when you have something you want to share, pull me aside after the meeting. I would rather know sooner rather than later. Like, you can also interject your own point when you've done that thinking from your Me manual.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderfully said. Thank you for sharing that. As I was reading the book, I kept kind of wondering, are there particular mindsets, or is there a mindset that you feel would be advantageous for people to adopt? Because, I mean, to a large degree, it felt like you wrote the book sort of about all the things that we don't do very well, right? I mean, to some degree, it's like, here's some tips to do things better that we don't currently do well. So I was wondering, is there a mindset or mindsets that you think could accompany all this to improve?
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that. I tried to write the book in a way, my attempt was to make the invisible visible for people, because there's this game and these dynamics are happening around us, yet we don't really understand how to identify them or how to navigate them. And what I hope everyone takes away from the book is you teach people how to treat you. That's a phrase that comes from my therapeutic days. Many times it applies to romantic relationships, but it really applies in the workplace as well. If you are, responding to messages within 2 minutes, or you're the one who's always volunteering for every single, crummy task that's coming across your desk, you are signaling to people that your time may not be valuable, that you'll always be the fixer and they don't really need to step up. Or if you don't speak up in meetings, or you do so with a lot of hesitance, you may be inadvertently teaching people not to value your ideas. And so I hope the book gives people a lot of tactics and tools and scripts to be much more confident with how they're showing up. And when you do that, when you change, the way people around you respond to you changes as well.
Yeah. Again, it goes to the responsibility that we have, right? And part of how people respond to us is the way that we project ourselves out and how they perceive what we're doing, and various different things. There's so much we could just go down. I'm looking at these questions here, and I go. So I'll ask this one because I've seen this actually happen in organizations, and wanted to get your thoughts on this. So, in the alignment section, one of the tips you give is to schedule a skip level meeting with your boss's boss, right? And I have worked, and I again, I agree. I think it's a fantastic idea. There's lots of, you lay out all of the great reasons why you do that in various different pieces in the book. I've worked with companies as a consultant where, I've actually tried to say, well, you need to do this, and I get the pushback. It's actively dissuaded. I'm not supposed to go around my boss. I'm not supposed to do any of this. So what advice would you give for somebody working in that type of environment?
Yeah. And I appreciate you pointing that out, because I think there's a lot of career management advice that is nice, but very idealistic.
Yeah.
Well, this would be nice to do, but it's not going to work here. Yeah. And as you pointed out, skip levels they depend on the organizational culture, right? If you're in a very hierarchical organization, also the personality of your boss and your skip level. They may also be much more traditional in that there is a chain of command. You follow that chain of command. And so, again, you need to know where you're operating. And that, if you're in that sort of environment, do not start with that strategy. You may need to use, or rather, I would say you have to use other strategies in the book to build a basis of trust, rapport with your manager before you ever make that ask, because that's kind of a big withdraw from the social capital bank that you have, and you need to deposit in it in other ways so that your boss knows, like, an element of trust is benevolence and integrity. Like, we understand someone has our best interests at heart. And if you don't have that established with your manager, it may just take a longer time to do that. And so that's one thing I would say is you don't have to jump right to that. Build the basis of trust. You can build up to that ask. Now, that said, there's also a way to position it. And I do give a template you could steal in the book.
I love the script in the book. Yeah.
It's really geared towards, I want to perform my best for you, manager, and I want to bring my best to the team. It would be really helpful to have some sort of broader perspective from your manager. Would you be open to me grabbing 30, 20 minutes with them to understand what's going on at their level? And if you don't think that's going to fly, maybe you ask, would your skip level be willing maybe to come to our one-on-ones and talk with both of us, or come to a team meeting about that? And so you can get creative with it, but I think it's about, take small steps at first, and maybe you find a workable compromise that may be more amenable.
You have a fantastic background, a wide and varied background in your career, and we've known each other for a total of 46 minutes or something here. But Melody, you seem like someone who's really in your groove. You're really in your groove is sort of the vibe that we get from you. How did you find your groove?
Lots of stumbles. Lots of stumbles along the way. It's nice to hear you say that, because there are, from the inside, it feels very different from the outside. And
share a little bit of the inside with us, if you would. Yeah.
It's funny, because what I get self-conscious of is that I'm a little bit of everything. I'm a professor, I'm a coach, I write books. I'm not just one thing. And so I really admire folks that have done, a tenured, full professor track, which has not been my track. I'm an adjunct, and yes, I've been doing it for 10 years now, but I feel like a little bit of an imposter sometimes, honestly. And so, it's been a lot of allowing the path to reveal itself. And so, like I mentioned, I started out my career, I thought I wanted to be a traditional psychotherapist, like office, seeing clients all day. Right. That was my dream from when I was very young. And then when I started doing that, I realized very quickly, this is not for me. I can't be cooped up in one room or on one screen all day. I need to have my hands in lots of different things. I have a lot of interests like that. And I have a very entrepreneurial spirit. My parents were entrepreneurs. And so, I feel like I just grew up with that in my DNA. And I care a lot about education. And I think that's a through line in my work, that with all of my work, whether it is my books, whether it's my coaching business, whether it is teaching, imparting that knowledge and giving people skills. One of my top values is freedom and independence. And to me, yes, it means flexibility, but to me, it means going back to that word agency. It's a very important word to me, that I never want people to feel helpless. I want them to feel like you have everything you need inside of you, or I can give you things that will help you better yourself. And so that means a lot to me, and I think is the one thing that goes through all of my work.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and I love how you talk about you stumbled into this, and like you had to experience what it was like to be a psychotherapist, to really know that vision that you had maybe as a youngster wasn't really all it was meant to be, and I think too often people will get stuck in their in that vision that they had as a child, and just try to make it work. It's like something is wrong with me, as opposed to no, maybe my initial idea wasn't what was really driving me and really getting me in my groove, and I need to readjust and reframe and look at all of those things. So I know Tim is itching to talk about music, so I am going to give him the platform and open it up for that.
Why, thank you, Kurt. I hope you're up for talking a little bit about music, Melody, because let's just start with your name, Melody, is just fantastic. As it's the heart of music, right? It's what makes music music. How did you come to the name? Is there a connection?
Yes. Well, I was telling you before we started recording that I have zero musical talent. I can't sing. I can't play an instrument. I can't read sheet music or anything. But of course, my parents gave me my name, and I come from a more musical industry focused family. So I was also telling you, I grew up, my parents ran retail music stores for many years. So records, tapes, CDs. And so really understanding, again, the business side of it has always been fascinating to me, a huge part of my life. And, been going to shows since I was, in an infant.
Yes. Okay. What was your first show? Do you have a recollection of your first concert?
I know that when I was very, very small, my parents brought me to the Philadelphia Folk Festival, which is like these marathon days of folk music, and we slept in a tent and everything. And I still have the T-shirts from back then. But besides that, it might have been Sharon Lois and Bram. I do clearly remember that. If you remember, like Skidamarinky-Dee.
Skidamarinky-Dee,
yeah. And then as a real person, as a teenager, one of my first concerts was Britney Spears. Oops, I Did It Again.
You saw Britney Spears live?
Third row. It was. Whoa. I will remember it till the day I die. It was fantastic.
Wow. Like, did your dad have industry access? Did he have special access to the promoters or anything? No,
not at all. This was just me back in the day on Ticketmaster, waiting for the tickets to open and refreshing and, on my dial-up connection. And I got
dial-up. Yeah.
Wow.
Remember those days?
Oh. So let's say you're stranded on a desert island for how long? Let's pick 3 months, and you can only take 2 musical artists with you, not the actual people, but their catalog. Which 2 would you pick?
The first that come to mind are Arcade Fire.
Okay.
And probably Death Cab for Cutie.
I thought for sure you were going with Taylor. I thought, as a Swiftie,
you're a Swiftie.
Go 3 months without. Yeah,
you're gonna kick her to the curb on this one.
I think so, because I think Death Cab and Arcade Fire, like the emotional connection.
Oh yes,
and they have a bit more like they could be background music, where I feel like Taylor is a little bit more in your face.
Oh, but, interesting.
Yeah, but I have found I was, like a pop punk, indie, emo kind of teenager growing up. And that pipeline from that type of teenager to Taylor Swift is actually a strong pipeline.
I hadn't thought about that one. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
I love Death Cab for Cutie. So I mean, I would definitely go. I mean, the lyrical kind of ways that they bring into it, the music is just fantastic. So
with your I can imagine growing up in a family in a record business that you would have been exposed to a wide variety of music, and that you weren't more novelty seeking in your response to this.
Definitely, yes. My father has the most eclectic music taste I couldn't even describe to you. So everything from I grew up listening to like hardcore punk rock, watching Rocky Horror Picture Show when I was 3 years old to, they're going to kill me for saying this. But
that's a lot. That's an intense movie for a 3-year-old.
I love it. It's still one of my favorite movies. But everything to country music and reggae and folk and, but yeah, for myself, because I spend so much time at my computer, I try to have things that can be on in the background and are kind of like peaceful ambiance creating. So I think that's why I made those picks.
And so did you listen to in these 5 rewrites of the book? Did you listen to music while you were writing?
I did. I'm a big binaural beats person when I'm writing. I do I don't know if it's placebo effect or what, but I do find they just help me lock in, and no lyrics. I have no lyric music because that's very distracting for me.
Yeah. But like, are you really kind of crazy and nerdy and intentional about it? Well, it's got to be 120 beats a minute.
Not specifically. Like I'll find them on Spotify and just put on the anxiety reducing ones, writing ones. Some of them are a little too zingy sounding, like too white noise sounding.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, you want actual music.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Also love Sigur Rós. That I also write the Sigur Rós very often. Yeah.
Wow. Let's see. That's a little slightly, off center. I think that's very cool. Well, it's such a pleasure to have you as a guest, Melody. Thank you so much for joining us today on Behavioral Grooves.
This was so fun. Thank you.
Welcome to our grooving session where Tim and I share ideas on what we learned from our discussion with Melody, have a free-flowing conversation, and groove on whatever else comes into our managing up brains.
Never saw that one coming.
Yeah, you did. Oh my God. That is this morning, I just don't have the brain power here to come up with something witty. I'm kind of.
You need to get on the Behavioral Grooves love train.
God, no, stop the love train. I don't know. Me and my sleep and didn't do it well last night. So I'm I'm not at that 100%, Tim. You're going to have to carry our grooving session. That's all I'm going to, you're carrying us.
Well, thank you very fucking much.
I'm managing up to my boss here and saying, hey.
Well, that person doesn't exist in our organization. Okay. All right. Well, let's do this. First of all, fun conversation with Melody. I love the fact that she wrote a book that is full of scripts. I think the world needs to have this book.
It's like a tactical, like, I want to bring that book into every meeting that I'm having because I can just like, oh, this is this conversation. Let me read the script. And granted, I mean, they're scripts. And so for some people, maybe you'll read them verbatim, but for many people, it's just having that initial piece. I know for myself, I would obviously update each of those scripts for myself. You know this. I can't repeat the same thing twice if I tried, right? So there is that aspect of it, but it gives you a good starting point. It gives this nice example of here's how it's done, not just the concept, but an applicable example of these are the types of words and how they're formed together in sentences and paragraphs to make this point.
I loved it. Well, I want to start our conversation with the me manual, because I think both of us were kind of connected to this.
Because you want to talk about me, right?
No, I want to talk about me.
Yeah, that's what I said. You're talking about me, right?
This whole idea about being yourself resonated so nicely with this idea that if you look at, if you take time every now and then, maybe every day, every week, every month, to kind of go, how am I doing, and what's working for me and what isn't, right? That we start to see the through line of what's working. Like Melody has this interesting career, corporate training, working in agencies, then coaching and things like that. A lot of it forms around education. She wasn't so intentional to say, I want to build a career about education. But if we're in touch with who we are, if we are finding our true selves, that starts to manifest itself kind of naturally.
Well, and I love how you just stated this idea of checking in with yourself, because I think too often, and I think this is why I like this me manual idea, is we go through life just going through it without the reflection, without the aspect of taking stock of where you are and are you on the right path? What are the patterns that are showing up in your life? What are those factors that you have maybe shifted over the years, over the decades? Those are things that we don't do enough. And having a me manual, just journaling in general, right? I mean, we create all those, the behavior shift behavior shift journals. See, I told you, lack of sleep. This idea of these behavior shift journals, the brain shift and daily shift, as well as the other materials we have, they're all designed to help understand what are the goals that you're setting for yourself, and then what are you doing? But they're also reflective. They're also this aspect of having you reflect back on the past week, the past month, the past quarter, and looking for those patterns. Because too often, if we're not searching for the patterns go undetected.
So a me manual could be as simple as an open notebook with just writing down your reflections, but the brain shift manuals journals that you and your partner Ben Granlund have created, those are a nice structured way of really kind of simply getting in and answering some structured questions, right?
They're guided journals. So as anybody who knows what guided journals are, they just have daily prompts. And so with the brain shift ones, they're quarter basically, but they're designed to be goal guided journals. So in other words, help you define a very clear goal, break that down into its component, like milestones and stepping stones. And then every week you're working towards achieving that goal. And there's unique prompts. And what's nice about it, I'm sorry, I'm getting on my little sales pitch here, but what's nice about the Brain Shift Journal, in my opinion, based on the science that we know, it is all based on behavioral science. We built it based on everything that we've learned from our 400 plus guests and all of the other work that we've done in bringing behavioral science into organizations. But part of it is that there are some of the prompts that are consistent week over week. It's to build that consistency, to build that habit and build that routine. but other prompts are unique. So they're shifting every month. Or, we're asking a gratitude question every day, but during the week, there's 5 different gratitude questions, right? So that they're not, it's not like, what are you grateful for today? What are you grateful for today? What are you grateful for today? And by 2 weeks, you're going, damn it, I'm not grateful to anything. I'm ungrateful to answer this damn question. And so there is this idea of bringing this, we're, as you always say, we're novelty seeking creatures. And so that is one of the things that we're responding to in this. So enough of my,
well, let me just wrap it back though to this idea of Melody promoting the Me Journal. The Brain Shift journals actually can help you start to see the through line of what's working in your life and what's working in your career and what you actually do love about the work and how your achievement sort of goes along with all those things, right?
Well, I think, yes, I think it could be more useful in identifying, all right, if I do want to move up inside of the organization, and then helping you put those that plan into action, right? It is there. It has the reflective part. It has the Me Journal, Me Manual part kind of built in a little bit, but more specifically, it's about if I know that I want to get a promotion, if I know that that is something that is moving that I want to do in the future, then these can be tools to help you do that. And combined with Melody's book, it's understanding, who do I have to manage up to? What are the relationships I need to build? And then putting that in play through that journal. So yeah.
Kind of a companion, kind of nice.
Yeah, it would be a companion. It'd be a nice, that's actually good. It would be a good companion piece. You should talk to Melody. Maybe we do a co-branded or like a, bundle.
You never know. Yeah.
Never know. All right.
Okay.
Well, so going back to the Me Manual, this basic understanding, I think there is that aspect of finding patterns and looking and making sure we're knowing what I want and looking at that. And it's really, to a certain degree, kind of how Melody, if you look at what she's done, that through line that she's had in her career, and it's kind of like she's just been finding her groove and following it.
Yeah, right. Along the way, all these different things, like no one's career is like this perfect ladder of step, right? Our career paths are paths. They're not just roads, that are already carved up. And so I love this idea that you can find your groove in a lot of different things at different times in your life, but being connected to who you are is maybe the most important thing.
So perfect with that.
Okay. What did you want to focus on in our group?
There was an aspect that Melody was talking about organizational awareness. This idea of reading the room, reading the tea leaves, whatever, paying attention, basically.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Right.
I mean, when it comes down to it. And really, I thought that was very insightful in the manner of, okay, I have to see what's happening and understand that. And I loved how she talked about, okay, extroverts have a natural advantage because they tend to communicate more and thus people are more aware of them. And there's organizational dynamics that reward that, all that kind of piece of that. However, they tend to communicate more and they may not be a person who is attention and reading the room and understanding that, where introverts are probably a little bit more attuned to that.
Yeah. So I thought that was kind of cool as well. Like this idea that the introverts have an advantage as well, because if they're sitting back and not speaking, they can flex their organizational dynamics and organizational awareness muscles to kind of be more aware of what's happening. I think about my own career. I'm not typically the guy that is first to speak in any meeting, unless it's my meeting.
Unless it's with me, right?
Yeah. I just don't have that. Oh, you've got, I have to be, first on the stage. That is just not me. But what I have seen is that as the first speaker speaks and the more senior people in the room, I get to kind of watch to see, well, how does that message resonate? I get to temper my remarks based on what the leader's reaction to that opening comments were, and I've benefited from that. You and I've talked also that I'm a reflective thinker. So
yeah, in what way have you benefited? I mean, it sounds almost to a degree like it could be interpreted, and I don't think this is what you mean, that you are couching your responses based upon what the leaders or others in the room are saying. So you don't want to be the odd duck out, and so you're going to couch what you're saying. And I don't think that's what you're implying.
Well, I can't deny that that's not part of it. That's certainly a part of it, but it does allow me to go, what are the things that the leaders are actually kind of perking up towards? And if I was thinking of saying A, B, and C, and I see that the leaders really respond positively to the B comment, I do want to focus. Like if that's where they think the solution is going, or where the strategy is headed, or whatever, like let's just follow that. And if I think that A and C still have merit, I can frame them as there's the other ideas that we might want to consider, as opposed to leading with, well, you're an idiot if we don't do A and C. I can frame it differently, and communication matters.
Yeah,
I think that we're going to talk about that too.
Well, and I guess it's interesting because I would maybe have a different perspective on that.
Good.
I would be looking at this, at least in the organizations that I've worked with. I too tend to not necessarily be the first person to speak. I know that's surprising to many people.
Surprises me.
If it isn't my meeting, and I do as well, like look at how that's playing, but I'm looking for all right, if I really believe it is A, B, C, I'm looking for the rationale that I can use to convince A, B, C, as opposed to seeing which way they're going. Oh no, it's D, B, and I'm going, well, let's look at this and try to understand. Maybe I missed something, but if I haven't, and I still have this belief, if I haven't been won over, and sometimes that's a problem because I can get caught up in the emotion, and a good spokesperson can sway us. But if that's not the case, then it's how do I convey? I think it's what you were saying before. It's like I start with B and then go to A and C, and maybe that's it. But maybe it's also looking at, you didn't consider this, and so that's why I think A, B, C is the right method to use.
Which in my mind is a framing thing.
I think framing is a really important piece of being able to read the room. It's also knowing, like, all right, sometimes this is not the time to bring something up, and sometimes it is absolutely the time to bring things up.
Absolutely.
And so being able to understand the emotions that are in the room.
Yes.
And I have seen, this is where sometimes speaking last isn't necessarily there, because you can see the meeting spiraling out of emotional control, where you're seeing two or more people go at it, or the energy in the room because a leader is talking and it's just bringing things down. And you have to either intervene to pick things up, or just pick, this is not the time to bring in that big new change that I wanted to talk about. It needs to come at a different time. So,
which for me gets to the third thing that I think we wanted to talk about, and that's just being better communicators. Something that Melody really focused on is the importance of being a good communicator. And of course, she does this very cleverly with the development of the scripts. in these 10 different conversations throughout the book. But I think in general, you and I have had a lot of experience in dealing with situations where how you communicate something matters a lot.
I mean, communication in the 30 years that I've been working in business, it is the one through component that I see with really successful people, is that they have an ability to communicate effectively, and in a manner that is appropriate for the situation. So this isn't meaning that you always have to be the person up on stage being, the main person. There are times in organizations and people, I mean, think about this. That person who, like you, might be quiet for 80% of the meeting and then bring in some key point that either, brings everything together or points a light at something that people have been forgetting. And that ability to communicate that way and to be able to, bring that information in a way that people gathered. I remember you know Fred Baumer, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Fred was an old mentor of mine. I worked for him for a number of years when I actually worked at BI, the company where I met Tim later when I was a contractor with them. But we were in this we were in a board meeting. It was this board of a major advertising agency. So all of the people in this room, we were in downtown Manhattan. They had all basically been owners of their own advertising firms that sold out to this. So they're multimillionaires, multi-millionaires. And we're talking about this strategy that's trying to get done. And there was contention in the room. And I'm junior consultant in there, and Fred is the lead. And we're going through this morning session. And it's not going anywhere. People are getting frustrated. You're seeing all of this. They're like saying stuff, nobody's alignment, all those different things. And then like 20 minutes before lunch, Fred gets up to the, whiteboard and just goes, here's what I think I'm hearing you guys say. And he pulls all of what these, 12 guys, and they were all guys, are, we're not finding agreement on in different pieces. And he was just able to elicit this kind of common ground for everybody and communicate that in a way that everybody goes, oh yeah. And so then we went off to lunch and everybody's happy and came back from lunch and we had a really productive way. But he was silent for 2 hours and I'm sitting there just like sweating my like, oh my God, this sucks. We're going to get fired. What are we doing? I can't do this. And he was just able to pull that all together.
So to me, that's a great example of being a great communicator doesn't necessarily mean that you're just talking all the time. He was receiving information. He was listening. He was actively processing in his brain what was happening so that he could create this summary. And another thing, so it's a fantastic skill, and we both have tremendous reverence for Fred because of that ability that he had. Yep. But he did that particularly well, in part because that was his strength. And so part of being a good communicator is understanding what your strengths are and being able to play to those strengths. And if you're not a good communicator, my recommendation, I'd say our recommendation, is become a good communicator.
Yes.
There's the sender-receiver model. There's a really great model out there. There's a wonderful book by Todd Rogers on how to write for busy readers.
Episode 382 of Behavioral Grooves, we talk with Todd about that book. So there you go.
We did, and or join Toastmasters. You have to communicate. Whatever job you have to communicate with your colleagues. You have to communicate with people up and down the organization. It's really worthwhile to your career and your life success to become a better communicator.
Yeah, and I think I want to just double down on that life success. So it's very important for your career. As I said, I think it's the one real piece that I've seen in all really successful people as they communicate. And what they do is they speak and write in a manner that is persuasive and concise. And there's an authenticity to it. So there is something about this. So, I need to work on that concise piece, but it's something that I think we're always striving for. It's this ability to communicate in an authentic manner and get your point across in a way that is going to resonate with the people that you're communicating to, which is what Fred did in that situation. He took reading the room, reading the tea leaves, and understanding and listening in that sender-receiver model. He was receiving much more than he was sending.
Yes.
And he did ask a couple clarifying questions in there in that sender-receiver model. That's part of it, because there's always noise in between. And so you have to make sure that the message that's being communicated is actually the one that's being received. Anyway, we could spend a whole hour on communication. It is really important. Maybe we ought to do a separate episode just on communication someday.
I think we should. My last comment is that I think Melody did a really nice job, both in our conversation and in the and in her book, to emphasize the importance of how you communicate and being authentic to yourself and dealing with these 10 conversations in a way that really is authentic to who you are, is what makes a good career, is what really makes managing up work.
I think that should wrap it up, Tim. Anything else?
Yes, I do want to say one other thing, and that is, in addition to 1 million downloads, we have a YouTube channel. You can consume all of this with our mugs live and in front of you if you like to consume podcasts on YouTube. So if you don't know about that, check it out. Check out our YouTube channel.
Well, and what's nice about the YouTube as well is if you don't have time to listen to all of these, we do have a number of shorts out there that are, 60-second, 30-second, 2-minute, elements that are snippets of really key pieces from many of these interviews. And so you can just kind of listen through, get a flavor for, is this going to be an interview that I'm going to be interested in or not? And then, or just get those real good snippets. So yes. So with that, Groovers, we hope that you take some of Melody's insights this week and use them as you go out and find your groove.